day.
Yeah, but see, I would disagree because there's people who couch surf, right? And they might have a so-called bed, but it's not really. But I was going to say, so I lived in New York in the early 90s. So my perception when I came here was there was a guy who lived like on the doorstep outside of our apartment building. And, you know, he was almost at the end of the day, he was almost always drunk. But at the beginning of the day, he wasn't. And I don't know, I saw him as a person. Like, he lived there. To me, that was his home. And they tried to take him away from there, and he was like, no, he wouldn't leave there. So in his mind, that was his home. But, you know, we gave him blankets, we gave him this, and but I saw him as a human being. And I think that there are a lot of people who just see it like as somebody who's living on the street. Like, they don't, the humanity of it is lost.
Yeah, especially if you call them homeless, because you were pointing out his corner on those steps, that was his home.
Right.
What really was the situation with him is, well, where's your shelter? Now we're talking about a physical structure. That's going to be different because he's calling the steps his home. He's at home. To him, he's not homeless. Yeah, you can't tell him he got to move. He's a tenant here. Okay, he's going to argue you tooth and nail about that. But if you say, well, where are you being sheltered? Well, he's going to stop. Because he knows the steps is not shelter. He calls it a home, but it's not shelter. Even in any of our minds, sheltering is where do I visit a physical place to reside with some walls, a roof. That begins to be where you shelter. So now somebody may say, well, my car is my shelter. So they're right. That's their home and that's their shelter. But then what you get to address is, yeah, but according to the city, that's not a safe haven. That's why they have to call it a safe haven, because a haven is a home, is what you're calling home.
So, stability, right?
Yeah, and so is that even a good, safe environment for a person? So that's why I asked, okay, so what's your definition of homelessness? And you said, well, to you, it's a person. You know, you're just looking at a person, a human being, not necessarily where they're living or sleeping. So that's a totally new, different perspective on the question of, well, what's your definition of homelessness? Now, if I say, now, what's your definition of sheltering?
So I would say then, knowing with assurance where you're going to sleep that night. And I think there's a lot of people don't know where they're going to sleep that night.
Because that begins to, that's when I was asking or mentioning the guy about the bed, that's when you think shelter, now you're starting to think bed. Maybe even a restroom included. You know, maybe a kitchen, because you're thinking sheltering from everything, whether, it doesn't matter, a door with a lock, because you're thinking of a shelter.
Where you can have a sustained existence, sustained, healthy, and safe existence.
And so that's why I think sometimes when you deal with affordable housing, how cities, define homelessness, some organizations are not going to count a Salvation Army because it's a shelter, and it is sheltering you from the elements. It's a place of safety. You can take showers and bath, and so your hygiene can be addressed. You now have a quality or decent food that's very edible, so they're going to say you're being sheltered.
They don't count that.
It doesn't always count as you being homeless, but that, again, home can be a funny term, but that's not permanent housing is what it's not. So when we're dealing with it legally, yes, I have shelter, but it's temporary and it's not guaranteed, because all I have to do is violate one rule, and the shelter, unlike a residential home, can put you out that day, that night, right then and there. They don't have to evict you. So that's when, again, we have to know law and say, well, shelters are not bound by law to have to file for eviction. If a person that stays in the shelter violates their rules, they then, at that moment, can be asked to leave. They can even end up incarcerated behind whatever incident. That's why we can't call that permanent housing or permanent sheltering, because it's not. You have rules and regulations that the law says, hey, they can put you out today. right now. Whereas you can do the same violation in a permanent home where you're paying for that time frame. So leasing saying, we'll let you stay here if you pay this amount. If you don't pay this amount, then you can't stay here, but we can't put you out tonight. We have to go through a procedure in order to put you out, a process, which now begins to include the court system. Which is why now we're dealing with, okay, permanent housing and affordable housing going together.
Unless they can deem it condemned, then they can evict you right away. Because that's happened in apartment
Then it's not a safe haven, maybe.
Right. They put that day, doors locked, you can't even get your stuff out. That happened to a big apartment complex down in somewhere on the south side, right? Recently.
Because if it doesn't have good plumbing, it still has to pass code.
Right.
So even in order for an apartment complex to function, it's no different than you having your own home.
Right.
It has to pass the code. The city ordinances says clean and healthy water, electricity and power, the mold and
Rodent
mildew.
infestation.
All that has. And then if they, so say if someone files a complaint that there's one of those things, the way the laws work is the landlord can just evict them. They don't have to actually fix it. And so then now if you're in a complex, everyone gets the eviction notice all at the same time.
Yeah. And you don't want to report.
You're not going to report because you know
just
that's
living
exactly.
in substandard.
They're not necessarily paying a low amount of money either. It might be like, okay, I have a blemish on my record, but they exploit that and say, well, you can stay here in this dilapidated place, but you're still going to pay $1,000 a month or whatever you're paying, you know. But if that's all they have, they take it.
I actually, in East Point, frequent a place where I was a squatter with a friend, and the apartment complex was condemned. It did not meet the fire codes, and the water supply was tainted. So they came and condemned the property. Everyone was given, I think we were given 90 days, and you had to leave. Now, if you were current on rent, the property manager said, we'll help pay your first month's rent wherever you go. If you were not current on rent, you were on your own. So even in that situation where, okay, they came in, the code people decided, it's not up to code. If you're behind in rent or not current, you're about to now lose your shelter.
Right.
You are about to be evicted to wherever you can go. So your new shelter may be the street. We do not apologize for that. The emergency vehicles. So yeah, it does mess with your perception of what actually is homeless, because anyone at any given moment, for a number of reasons, can lose their shelter.
Yeah, right.
And are they actually homeless, or what are they right then and there? Because they were paying, or they were in an environment, and they may have only been 1 month behind in that situation, because a lot of people were in different situations. So the guy I was squatting with, and he was current.
Yeah.
The government was paying his, so they paid his first month rent. He moved in 30 days. I had another group of friends roll the whole 90 days out. They wasn't sure where the heck they was going. They didn't know.